Hello, friends. Today we are going to read about spores. So we have been learning about plant structures and the different components of a plant. We've talked about flowers. Then we talked about cones and how some plants don't make flowers, but they make cones to reproduce or to make new plants. And today we're going to talk about spores and how spores help specific plants to make new ones. So we are in our reading packet on page 71, right under the section on cones. And we're in our question packet on page 83 in our section that says spores. So we're going to start like we do every time. We're going to answer those true, false, before questions to get our brain thinking. And remember, as always, you may not know this answer. That is acceptable. Take a guess. It's just a way to get us to think. So our first statement says, spores are the part of a fern that make pollen. True or false? You may or may not know that. Spores are the part of a fern that make pollen. Put true or false in your before box. Number 2 says, spores grow on the roots of some plants. I'm not sure about that one, but take a guess. Spores grow on the roots of some plants. Again, true or false? And our third statement says plants that make spores also make seeds. Plants that make spores also make seeds. Is that true or false? Now, you probably have not heard of spores before, so you might not have any idea about these answers. And again, that is okay. We're going to talk about it here in just a second. All right, you should now have your before column filled in. So let's go to our reading. We're on page 71. Follow along as we talk about spores. So we've talked about cones and we talked about flowers before. Other kinds of plants, so ones that don't make cones and don't make flowers, like ferns and mosses, do not make flowers, cones, or seeds. Let's read that again. So this is a fern. These types of things, ferns or mosses, so you might have seen moss on the side of a tree or even on your ground, do not make flowers, cones, or seeds. These kinds of plants reproduce, remember, make a new one, using dust-like particles called spores. So think about in your house, if your mom or dad dusts, there's those little teeny things floating around. That's the size of their spores. If you look at the underside of a fern leaf, you will see lots of dark brown spore cases. Each case contains hundreds of spores. So it's kind of like a little storage zone for the spores. Spores do not have food for the new plant like seeds do. So when the spore is released, it's not like the seed having its own food ready to furnish until it gets to that point of producing its own. It is harder for a spore to grow into a new plant. It needs just the right conditions. So when it opens and releases the spores, it has to be able to find those right conditions right away in order to grow a new plant. It doesn't have life to sustain inside of it. So under this picture here, it says, when the spores on this fern are ripe, meaning ready, the cases will burst open and the spores will blow away on the wind. And you're going to watch a video of a plant releasing the spores. So here is a close-up of the underside of a fern. And this is the spore cases. And I mean, they are teeny tiny. Think about the size of this leaf. It's super small, okay? And these little teeny tiny dots are all a spore case. And they hold the little teeny spores. When they're ready, these little spore cases release the spores into the air. And again, they have to blow away and find those right conditions immediately in order for them to survive. So you're going to watch a video here shortly that's going to show you what it looks like when the spores release. All right, next time we come together, we're going to start talking about, well, how do we classify these plants then? I will see you then.